have the floor.
Thank you so much. Hopefully you all can hear me. If someone can give me just a quick thumbs up or let me know that my audio is coming through. Perfect. Thank you. So give me 1 second and I'll go ahead and share my screen.
Dr. Shello, this is John Cleveland. I'm happy to run your presentation for you.
Oh, perfect. Okay. You saved the day, John. Thank you. Okay, well, I am able to see that, so I will go ahead and get started. Again, Michelle, John, thank you for having me, and I want to thank you all for joining today. And what I want to talk about is how engagement and satisfaction can help improve performance, both employee performance and organizational performance. And just to give a little bit of background on how this topic for me came about, I had noticed, there was a large push in the government to improve employee engagement. And there was this initiative that had come about in 2015. But when I started my doctoral study, I realized that from 2015 to 2019, at the time, the 2020 feeds hadn't come out yet. There was only about a 3% increase. And so I was wondering, well, what's missing? Why is it that there's this huge initiative? They're putting all these resources into encouraging employee engagement, but over the last 5 years, and I even went back 10 years, there's only about a 3% increase. So what I found was that employees were dissatisfied mostly with the quality of their leadership. They were dissatisfied with the integrity and communication of their leadership, and they weren't being motivated to come up with new ways to do things. They weren't motivated to try new solutions. And that posed a problem, because that means that employees they're not motivated, so they're not doing anything to come up with more efficiencies. So if we want to go to the next slide. So this prompted me to kind of look at the difference between employee engagement and job satisfaction. As I was going through the questions on the thieves, in particularly as what related to employee engagement, I wanted to see where are we falling short. And what I noticed was the way that some of these questions were being measured. Engagement included questions that were about satisfaction. Satisfaction was being measured as satisfaction and dissatisfaction. And so I think the first thing we need to consider is what employee engagement and job satisfaction are and what they are not. So engagement is really an employee's willingness to invest themselves both physically or cognitively and emotionally into their work. It's their willingness to participate and to go above and beyond. And job satisfaction is the degree to which an employee is satisfied with their type of work. So if they're satisfied, then that creates that willingness for them to become more engaged. Dissatisfaction is on its own continuum. So, and that's associated with an employee's basic needs, their views of leadership, their morale, their pay. If an employee likes their job, if they love what they do, then they're satisfied. But if they have terrible leadership, they're satisfied and dissatisfied. They're not opposites. They're on two separate continuums. And we'll get into that further. So next slide, please. So just to give a little perspective, on why this is important, it impacts the quality of work. Only 21% of employees feels that their leadership manages their performance that in a way that motivates them to do more outstanding work, meaning that that's a small portion of the workforce that feels that they that they can even go ahead, move forward, take chances, and come up with more innovative solutions. And then only 14% of employees are inspired to even improve their performance in the first place, which that can right there is a predictor on how performance is going to be expected to grow if employees continue to not feel valued enough to improve. Next slide, please. So I think we've all been in this situation where we've been working, we've come up with creative solutions, we've come up with a million different ways to get things done in an unreasonable amount of time, and you bring it to your boss, and you're hoping for some sort of reward, and they're like, you know what, everyone has done a great job. Here is, a pizza party, which is the big running joke. And while that's great, it doesn't really make an employee feel seen or valued, or it doesn't compensate for the quality of work that they give. So what should we consider, as leaders? It's improving the ability to accurately measure issues that come about. If it can't be measured, it can't be improved. If you can't measure issues, you can't improve them. You don't know where they stand. Understanding the employee needs. What resources do they need? Is productivity down because we need more computers? Is there enough space? Do they have the program software that they need? Anything like that. Meaningfulness and work. This is when employees know what they're doing and why it matters. And if I circle back to the thieves, actually some of the questions were about understanding how their work contributes to the overall goal of the organization, and even about leadership communicating why their work matters. And those were some low scoring questions on the feed. So if employees are not understanding what they're doing, why it's important, why it matters, then they don't have any value. They don't have any value for what it is they're doing in the first place. Safety at work, trust. That means trust amongst leadership, first line supervisors, being sure to communicate effectively, and then rewards. Adequately rewarding employees for their work. And then this is just, understanding the correlation between engagement, satisfaction, and performance. So traditionally, even in the aspect of the government, leaders are focusing on engagement. But truthfully, employees must be satisfied in order to be engaged. So engagement is actually caused by satisfaction. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So here we're looking at engagement. So employee engagement, again, it represents an employee's willingness to immerse themselves in their role. And the chart that you see on the right-hand side, they list a few characteristics that go into each condition of engagement. What influences engagement are perceptions of meaningfulness, safety, and availability. And then you have three types of engagement. The physical, that's the effort your employee is willing to exert to meet goals, that going that extra mile. What influences the emotional is the relationship with their supervisor and their peers, their inner personal, the working relationships. And that is contributed to, by morale. And then cognitive engagement, the awareness of the mission and their role in their work environment. And this is very important. It's one thing to tell someone, to do something, but telling them why it matters and how what they do matters and why it's a value add, it makes it makes all the difference as to how an employee then becomes engaged, because they're able to add an element, a measurable element of impact and value to an assignment or to a role, or anything of that nature. Next slide, please. So here we'll look at satisfaction. And this is kind of, as I touched on earlier, this shows the two continuums for both satisfaction and dissatisfaction. They're not opposites. They're on their own, measured independently. So satisfaction is measured by the internal factors, motivational factors, adding intrinsic value, promotion opportunities, recognition, recognizing achievement, responsibility. Those things are internal factors. And then you have dissatisfaction, your hygiene factors, quality of leadership, pay, policy. Those things are separate. Those are external to the work itself. You have the work itself, and then you have the place of work. And so that's why those two are measured on a separate continuum. And dissatisfaction, those are factors that represent an employee's basic needs. So I think before we go to the next slide or any further, I just wanted to offer the opportunity for any questions before we moved on to the next slide. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide, please. So feel free to jump off mute or to put in the chat, but I just wanted to walk through the theory for engagement and satisfaction. So next slide. So here we have a scenario, and we're going to look at the first scenario. John absolutely hates cutting grass. Not only does he hate cutting grass, but his company has poor leadership and they pay well below market salary. And so in this scenario, I think we can see that John has no satisfaction and also has high dissatisfaction. So if we want to proceed, yes. So with that, those are the results for that first scenario. So for these second, third, and fourth scenarios, I would like you guys to kind of just take a guess, and I want to open it up to talk about, the differences here. So for scenario 2, again, John still hates cutting grass, but he has reliable leadership that pays extremely well, and his company offers a bonus of about $1,000 per yard cut in under an hour. So when it comes to John's satisfaction, what are your guys' thoughts? Do you think John would be satisfied, not satisfied, dissatisfied? I would like to see some answers either in the chat or feel free to come off mute.
I would say John is satisfied. There is some satisfaction there because of the rewards. And sometimes that pumps your heart, like, oh yeah, I'm getting something out of it.
Yeah, it motivates him, right? He
right.
hates the internal he hates the work itself still. But now, well, I've got good leadership and my company is paying me $1,000 a yard to cut in under an hour. And so here he may have some low elements of satisfaction. It would be really temporary. But what we're seeing here is that he has no dissatisfaction. So he doesn't like the job itself, which is cutting grass, but he's getting some good, he has good benefits. He has good leadership. And he's getting paid well. So those basic needs are met. He just does not like the job itself. So if we move on, thank you, Laverne, for answering that. If we go ahead to the third, so now we have John, and cutting grass is his absolute favorite thing to do. He loves it, but his company doesn't pay well, and he's micromanaged by his leadership. So what are we thinking here in regards to satisfaction and dissatisfaction?
Okay, well, I'm going to jump in there. I would say maybe some dissatisfaction because, but on the same token, cutting grass is John's favorite thing to do. There's the loyalty, I guess you would say. But still, there is dissatisfaction.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I want to, remember again that satisfaction and dissatisfaction, they're not the same continuum. So they're measured independently. So in this scenario, if we want to just show the result, John has high satisfaction. If we're looking at just his satisfaction, he loves the job itself, loves cutting grass, but his company, the ones he works for, they don't pay well. He's micromanaged, high dissatisfaction. And what you can gather by this scenario is that John will probably stay in the profession, but he's probably going to leave his company and go to another company. And for the last, we got, John still loves cutting grass. He has supportive management team. They're open to new ideas, and he's paid well, paid competitively. And in that last scenario, we can see if we want to show the result. But in this scenario, we would say John is highly satisfied with no dissatisfaction. He loves the job itself. He loves his company. 9 times out of 10, John is probably not going anywhere, and he's probably going above and beyond. So this example explains the differences in the continuums of satisfaction and dissatisfaction. So if we want to move to the next slide, please. Okay. So in this scenario, John, we're using the same guy, and now we're going to account for engagement. So John's company has informed their employees that they will provide training on more efficient ways to cut grass if the company meets their revenue goals. They will receive a 2% raise at the end of the year. So in the scenario one, John still hates cutting grass. He still has poor leadership. They pay below market salary. But now his company is offering training. And if the company itself meets their goals, they'll receive a 2% raise at the end of the year. So if we remember from just the last scenario, we know that John has no satisfaction. He has high dissatisfaction. So what is the likelihood that he's going to take this training to improve on more efficient ways to cut grass to help this company meet their goals for a 2% raise? He already doesn't like the job, doesn't like the company. And so if I had to take a guess, there's no willingness there. No satisfaction means no willingness to be engaged. He's not taking the training. He's going to continue to do the absolute bare minimum. And I'm not sure if that was Yes, no satisfaction, high dissatisfaction, and no means no to low engagement. Um, if we look at scenario 2, he hates cutting grass, but he has reliable leadership. They pay extremely well. His company offers a bonus. Um, so we know he has no satisfaction, but no dissatisfaction. So he just doesn't like the job. He does like his company. And I think Laverne had mentioned previously about some loyalty. And that is where you might see that come in here. He doesn't like the job, but he's loyal to his company. So he may go ahead and take that training to become more efficient to help the company reach their goals. And so you would expect low to some engagement. Third, we're back to John loving cutting grass. But again, he's dissatisfied with his company. So for 3, we have we have high satisfaction, high dissatisfaction. But because he loves the job, he wants to become more efficient, right? It's internal, it's intrinsic. He wants to be better. He will most likely take that training and implement those strategies, because although he is not, although he has high dissatisfaction and is not a fan of his company, he still loves his skill and the job and the work itself. So there is where you would get some moderate engagement. And then lastly, again, John loves cutting grass and he loves his work. He loves his company. He has a supportive management team. They're open to new ideas, paid well. This is a surefire way to know that John is going to take the training. He's going to come up with to learn more efficient ways. And he'll probably use those to try to find some more innovative solutions to get the job done even better, even faster. And companies can assume that John probably stay with them, and there's low risk of turnover in a situation like this. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I want to just kind of open it up and see if there are any thoughts, any questions regarding, the satisfaction and dissatisfaction continuums and how that is actually what influences engagement. So any questions or just kind of thoughts on that? Okay, not seeing any. But what I was wanting, what I want to communicate is that, while there is this push for engagement, it's important to note that engagement itself is not what improves performance, but actually satisfaction. We need to be sure that employees have high satisfaction, low to no dissatisfaction. And this is what actually creates engagement, causes engagement. Without satisfaction, you will have very low amounts of engagement. And if there is a spike in engagement, it's usually short-lived. And if I would just give an example here, kind of as going back to the thieves, when I did this research, I actually did come up with a formula that predicts the future performance based on engagement and satisfaction, a quantitative formula that you could implement based on the scores. However, when I was looking at the thieves results from 2019, before the 2020 results had come out, 2019, 10 years back, there was only about a 3-point increase. But from 2019 to the 2020 thieves, there was about a 5-point increase. That means in that 1 year, employees were more satisfied, highly engaged. They're the scores for their trust in leadership and communication, the scores for being rewarded, all of those had increased in that 1 year. And what had happened in that 1 year? It was COVID. 2020 was the year of COVID. It was the year that the nation, employees, people were in a panic. Then we started working from home, and what that did was forced senior leaders to communicate more with their employees and let them know, we're ahead of this. We're working home. We care. We're allowing you to work from home. We care about your safety. These are the things that we can do. Does anyone have any ideas on how we can improve these strategies? And at that point, everybody worked cohesively as a team. Employees saw why and how their work was valued. They were encouraged to come up with more innovative strategies to meet the mission, and their leadership was all on one accord. They heard their concerns and needs, and so what we saw in the 2020 FEEBs were people's responses to that situation with COVID that actually, they had to get more resources. They had to set employees up to work from home. So we saw that reflected. All of these factors for satisfaction, dissatisfaction, and engagement were met in that one year, in that one instance, but it was by force, right? Because we were in a pandemic. And so now we're in 2023, and what we're seeing are those results are starting to decline again. So that's one thing. Brandy, pay is usually out of leadership's control. You're absolutely right. And pay has come up from my organization with more folks dissatisfied. Any suggestions on how to address? So pay, especially in the government, is it's one of those things that we're on a separate scale or pay band. And the one thing that companies or that government agencies have the latitude to do is we may not be able to change your salary. However, we do have the latitude to offer you rewards for our financial rewards. We have the opportunity to give bonuses and structured in certain ways. So the pay structure itself, cannot change, but how you offer monetary awards to supplement that is a way to be, it's kind of a way forward to show consideration to employees. But we also know we have to communicate that. We're on a GS scale, and our pay is kind of set. Now, if it is a matter of pay in regards to somebody is feeling like they should be promoted, or maybe be increased a step and they're not, that's a different type of issue. Hopefully, Brandy, does that give some insight?
Yes, thanks for that. And I've got the follow on like what you were just getting into, that like, we got people, we have a lot of hiring going on, but not everybody's gonna get a promotion, right? So people are, getting dissatisfied on that front, that there are all these openings, but then like there's not an opening for everybody to be promoted. It's like, well, that's not how that works, right? Like we have job openings, you apply, you have to meet these qualifications, we select the most qualified, and there's not everybody that has reached their max and their career ladder is going to automatically get promoted, right? So like these nuances and conversations, like we see in the results that folks are dissatisfied, but then like trying to get folks to understand and have that awareness of it's more than just you want a promotion. Like there are all these other things that go into it folks aren't happy, like getting those kind of explanations. But yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, and that's an ongoing issue just across industry, even private sector. You know, sometimes we do have those employees who expect promotions and don't, and then those who really deserve them. And that is also kind of where the relationship between supervisors and employees comes into play, because if you do have an employee, for example, who works hard, has the technical skills, has the leadership skills, and does deserve to be promoted, but we have to put it out, and if it's a great increase, promotion, it has to be competed for and those things. But there are also nuances with that, with some of those, with just the application process, right? They have to be based on their responses, and then you've got the scoring. So those types of things are definitely intricate situations. And then, but if there is an employee that, for example, deserves a promotion and didn't get it based on some small technicality, go to bat for that employee. But if it's the situation where someone just thinks they're entitled to it, sometimes, we just have to have that difficult conversation with them. So thanks, Brandon. That was a great question. Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any. So let's go to the next slide. So this just, again, talks about the impact of satisfaction and engagement on performance. As we know, satisfaction, if employees are satisfied, we can assume that their engagement will increase, and both of these things contribute to performance. But without satisfaction, they'll perform minimally successful or below that. And what usually is the predictor for this, minimally successful means no satisfaction and no dissatisfaction. That's where you get the baseline. If they're performing below that, there's no satisfaction and high dissatisfaction. What we see here is 9 out of 10 employees will be willing to trade an average of 23% of their earnings for greater meaning at work, meaning that employees would be willing to get paid less if they could just understand why their work matters. 71% looking for a new job due to lack of satisfaction, or influencers of satisfaction. Again, those are those rewards, the achievements, the opportunity to move up, not necessarily the dissatisfaction, which are those basic needs. Then, of course, employees that experience higher level of meaningfulness in their job, they take fewer leave days, typically work an additional hour, and 69% less likely to leave their job within the next 6 months. That's important because that lets us know how to predict turnover. If we know that our employees there's high dissatisfaction, they're probably looking to go somewhere else. And highly satisfied employees are 18% more productive than those with less satisfaction, which this positively correlates to the performance in an organization itself. It increases innovation, productivity, and output. Next slide, please. And these are just some examples here taken from some questions of the thieves. So are they considering leaving their organization? And it's a little difficult to see, but what the line shows are the trends between increased engagement, increased satisfaction, and the topic of consideration. So what you see in the first one is the more satisfied and the more engaged they are, which is the top of that line, their responses to leaving the organization are no. The middle, as we decrease in satisfaction and engagement, we start to see, which is 32%, are considering leaving their job, but to take another federal job. So this probably means that they're satisfied, but have some levels of dissatisfaction within their organization. And then some, as we decrease in satisfaction and engagement, they're taking another job outside of the federal government. And what this tells us is that only 38% are even thinking of staying at their organization. The majority of employees are looking to leave, whether they're going to another federal agency or if they're going to outside the government. What we have below is I feel encouraged to come up with new ways of doing things. And so again, as you can see, the more engaged and satisfied, the more employees are willing to come up with new ways of doing things. And then the same for putting in extra effort to get the job done. I did think this result was interesting, as nobody put strongly disagree or disagree, which probably reflects, if I have to, I will. And so that's probably where you get that neither agree or disagree. But when needed, they're willing to put in the extra effort to get the job done. More satisfied and engaged, the more willing they are. Next slide. And so how do we achieve this? Well, we have to change the way of how we think these things are related. So to avoid a big mathematical explanation, just and put simply, the government and a lot of even private industry, they look at a one-to-one relationship, meaning they were looking at how employee engagement affects employee performance and how job satisfaction affects employee performance. And what we need to do is look at what causes engagement in the first place. And we realize that engagement cannot even exist without job satisfaction. So if you were looking at them one-to-one, you'd see that high levels of engagement do improve performance. And then it would look like job satisfaction has some impact, but the real impact is in engagement. That's partially true, but if we look at what causes engagement, it can't exist. So we need to look at job satisfaction as our primary focus, because if we get that, you get the crux of any leadership issues, any pay issues, but you also get those motivational factors. If you that's addressing the problem. Addressing engagement is kind of like addressing the symptoms. So if you address satisfaction, that is what causes engagement. So you know that engagement will come, and ultimately employee performance will be improved. So next slide. And these are just, again, some ways on how we achieve increased satisfaction and engagement. Be intentional with our first level supervisors, because those level supervisors, they represent top level management. If employees are not satisfied with their direct supervisor, they are definitely not satisfied with their top level management. And your supervisor should have more than just the technical acumen. They must be able to create an engaging environment, a safe environment where employees feel like they can make mistakes, where they can try new ideas. They should allow for coaching strategies, encourage recognition and communication, which is key, especially when looking at the FEVs. Communication was one of the lowest rated areas when it came from top level supervisors to employees. That was one of the lowest scoring areas, and is what contributed to a lot of employees saying they don't trust their top level supervisors in the first place. And then provide growth opportunities. And sometimes we need to be innovative on what this means. So if this means growth opportunities as offering to pay for certain certifications for your employees, whether it's contract level certifications or digital IT certifications, things like that, offering those type of growth opportunities to expand their human capital. And then, of course, if it's warranted, promotions. And then make sure that the data is being collected so you can continuously see, okay, are we meeting the mark? The FEEVs is one thing to use. That's what I use for my study. But as we all know, situations are different in each agency. And so if you came up with your own post-check survey, you can continuously monitor where you're falling short or where, you're doing well. The FEEVs also has some sub-indices that you can use to explore problem areas within the organization, or take a closer look at what employees are actually thinking. And then focus on employee satisfaction. Again, talking about those post checks, getting employee buy-in, making them feel valued on decisions that are coming through, and letting them feel heard is a big encouraging factor. And knowing your team, assess members' strengths and weaknesses, use task relevant maturity to assign projects, meaning allowing your team members or members on the team to utilize their skills. They want to use their skills, and some of them have very unique skills. So allow them to use those skills to take on projects, to come up with new strategies and solutions. And then again, provide training opportunities for them. Next slide, please. And that is all I have. So are there any questions or comments? I'd love to hear from you guys.
Okay, great presentation. Oh, I got an echo in here. Great presentation. Thank you so much. I do feel that, we have employees that feel like they are not recognized as much, but I like the fact that you said let them buy in, and I believe let them teach, because some of them have specialty skills that we're not even aware of. So I will chime in on that with the other employees to see, hey, what would you like to do? Do your own briefing, or do a briefing to our team, on one of their specialty, because everybody has a purpose.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And bringing that to the forefront, giving them the opportunity to showcase, if you will, showcase that, or even teach other team members a new skill, one that promotes knowledge sharing and knowledge transfer. So if we were to think of this as far as retention, one of the big things is when somebody's been in a position for a long time, and then they leave and they take that knowledge with them. Well, then you're kind of scrambling, right? But if you give the opportunity, especially for the leaders that you're growing to come up into leadership positions, give them the opportunity to share that knowledge and work with other team members, or even other teams, depending. That right there is a good way to just already improve the culture of knowledge sharing, knowledge transfer, while letting them feel valued. Joseph, I see that you asked the question, what is the FEEVs? I'll put it right here. So the Federal Employment Viewpoint Survey, and you can find it on OPM's website. and they have it broken out by government wide, and then they have agency specific, and depending on the agency, they may even be bureau specific. Thorough engagement viewpoint survey. I use this study for my doctoral study, and essentially what I did was I looked at the FEVs to get measurements on engagement, satisfaction, and performance. And while we didn't have, a ton of time today, there's an entirely second component to what I found, which is the mathematical portion, showing what percentage of engagement and what percentage of satisfaction actually contribute to the changes of performance. And then again, I created a formula to use for companies to use to predict future performance, or they can use it to predict turnover, or they can use it to predict all different, really different elements. It can be used for any elements for any survey. But what I found was crazy. It was essentially that the government had this big initiative and there was no change, and it was because we were looking at things the wrong way from the start, which was a really interesting finding. So hopefully I put that in there, the fee, so you can find that on OPM's website.
And it's Michelle here. I had one quick thing, because I know we can find your slides on the FEB website, but going back to the FEV's overall engagement, and maybe it's just the fact that I was gearing up for today's presentation. Is it normal to see this many emails coming back with regards to agencies requesting that feedback, or a big push on utilizing the FEV survey or filling that FEV survey out? Like, is it done multiple times?
Oh, sorry, there was an echo, so I couldn't catch what exactly that last part was that you were asking. So
Is it an annual survey, or is it like on a quarterly basis by agency?
It's an annual survey that OPM sends out, and it is anonymous. And then each federal employee would fill in their agency, and that's how they capture that data. And you can actually, if your agency takes the FEVs, you can request the results of your agency if you don't see them in the report section on the website. And what I've done even for my own agency is taken those results and broke it down as far as division and team specific. So we were able to actually see what problem areas existed for each division, and kind of go from there, so we could again start treating, not just trying to treat the symptom, for example, but actually fixing the problem. Hopefully that answers your question.
That it does. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sure.
I think Brandy also had a question, or maybe she
yes,
came off mute.
places to work. I see that, and I actually use that in my study as well. Some of their data. That is a very good resource, especially if you want to compare against other agencies, or compare government to private industry to see how we are faring. As far as technology, we're a little behind the curve, but that's a different topic. So I think with that,
We First, I just want to say thank you for being a presenter today and being our speaker for today's Lunch and Learn. But what you're seeing here on your screen right now is a Lunch and Learn poll. It's just it's like 2 questions. We try to get as much feedback as possible, like doing our own survey of what we can do, or if anybody's interested in being a future speaker, or if they plan on attending the next months or years Federal Executive Board Lunch and Learns. I am going to put the information again back in the chat. So if you want to look at a later time on the topics that we've already covered, or listen to any of the previous month's recordings from any speakers, I know that today's session was recorded, and it could take up in 48 hours to get that uploaded and onto the